Today our text is Confederate culture. Love that alliteration that our author gave us today. Before we get started, we're going to do our quick write. Life on the northern home front was successful. What predictions can you make about life on the southern home front? Why do you think this? Write 3 to 4 sentences answering all of the questions in the quick write. Press pause to complete your answer and play when you're ready to get started. Our focus question for today is, what is the main idea of the text? When this unit is over, you will have mastered this skill. I'm so confident. In order to find the main idea of the text, the strategy we use is asking a how or why question about the title. Go ahead and create your how or why question. This should say 3. Hang on. Go ahead and create your how or why question about the title Confederate culture. I'm thinking, how does the author describe Confederate culture? How was Confederate culture? Why did Confederates have their own culture? How was Confederate culture different from Northern culture? Those are several great questions that can help you find the main idea. Please choose one and write it down. Before we get started reading, there are 3 very important words we want to incorporate into our writing today. The first one is rebel. It's a person who rises in opposition or armed resistance against an established government or rule. So when you decide that you are not going to follow directions, you are being a rebel. And we know our Confederate citizens rebelled against the Union. They said, hey, we're not going to be a part of your country anymore. We are going to create our own. That's why we have a picture of the Confederate flag. Next, we have currency. It's a system of money. Down here, we have a picture of some Confederate currency. And lastly, we have existence, the fact or state of living or having objective reality. And I chose a picture of the world because it is the only planet that we know of that has life on it. Turn in your notes to the 3rd section and we will get started reading. The Confederate States of America existed for 4 years. From the spring of 1861 to the spring of 1865. During those years, this rebel nation chose a president and a vice president, elected members to a House of Representatives and a Senate, and set up a Supreme Court. The Confederacy also printed its own currency, raised a national flag, and adopted a constitution identical to that of the United States, except that the Confederate Constitution contained an amendment guaranteeing the existence of slavery. Go back in your text, underline the answer. How does the author describe Confederate culture? And when you're finished, write your main idea in the box. You can press pause as you're doing this, and then play when you're ready for box 2. In box 2, we're looking at this picture and caption of Jefferson Davis and his wife, Varina Davis. It says, Jefferson Davis, on the left, was the only president the Southern nation ever had. He was elected to a 6-year term. As a young man, he married the daughter of future U.S. President Zachary Taylor. His bride died just months after their wedding. His second wife, Varina Howell Davis, on the right, was the First Lady of the Confederate States of America and mother of their 6 children. Following her husband's death in 1889, she moved to New York City and supported herself as a professional writer. In box 2, it asks us to describe Jefferson and Varina Davis. Well, we know Jefferson Davis was the only president of the Confederate States of America, and Varina Davis was the only First Lady of the Confederate States of America. And then it asks us, why do you think the author labels aspects of the Davis's clothes? What does this communicate about them? That should say communicate. What does this communicate about them? Well, he labels this upright collar. He labels the satin vest lapel on Jefferson Davis. And that lets me know, he is professionally dressed. These are actually very formal clothes. And we know that you only wear formal clothes usually on special occasions. That formal clothes are usually very expensive. And for Varina Davis, she has a fan with her. She also has a cameo bracelet. So the author points out that she's holding, or she has expensive accessories. She's also in this very formal dress. So we could think, the author labels or points out the expensive aspects of Jefferson and Varina's clothes, and he's trying to communicate that they were very important as well as wealthy. Press pause to write down your answer and then play to go to box 3. We're at play during the war. Southerners tried to amuse themselves during the war years with games, books, and theater. These Confederate women are escaping their worries by playing a game of croquet. Croquet is kind of like an old version of putt-putt, is how I would describe it. But instead of like putting the golf balls into holes in the ground, you try to put them through these little, they're like little arches. Okay. It says, how did Confederate women spend their time? Well, our text tells us that they played games, read books, and were involved in theater. And then based on the author's word choice, how does his attitude about Confederate free time differ from his attitude about Northern free time? And I really want you to focus on this last sentence that says, these Confederate women are escaping their worries by playing a game of croquet. So the author implies that they are worried. They're probably worried about their husbands. They're probably worried about what will happen if they lose the war. And this is different from how he describes Northern free time. Yesterday we talked about how in the North they were very successful. They had more money. They had more land. They, watched baseball. So in the North it sounded more carefree than in the South. They are worried, and they're trying to occupy their time because they're worried. Are you leaving? I'll bring it down to you after I finish this recording. Sorry for the interruption. Go ahead and write down your answer for box 3, and then meet me over at A Southern Aristocrat when you're finished. It says, Caroline Deslantes was the daughter of a plantation owner in Louisiana. Shortly before the war, she married Pierre Beauregard of the Confederacy's first hero generals. Caroline was a member of the wealthy class of Southerners who had a strong influence on politics and society. Many poor Southerners blamed these people for the war and its hardships. So it first tells us to describe Caroline Deslantes, And we know that she was the daughter of a plantation owner, and she married Pierre Beauregard. And then it says, how did Southerners view the wealthy members of their society and why? If we go back to this last sentence, it says, Southerners had a strong influence on politics and society. She was part of the wealthy class of Southerners that had a strong influence on politics and society. That lets me know that if you were wealthy, you had power, you were able to make a difference. But if you were poorer, people did not listen to your ideas, and you weren't in a position to change things about your life. And so as a result, many poorer Southerners blamed the wealthy for the war and for the hardships. So when it says, how did Southerners view the wealthy members of society? Well, they had a negative view. Poorer Southerners had a negative view of wealthy members in society. And it says, because they blamed them for the war and for their hard life. Press pause to write down your answer, and then play when you're ready for the paragraph. It says, how does the author describe Confederate culture? And we know that we can use our main idea about Confederate culture, and then we can use evidence from these three boxes to support our ideas about whether or not the author thinks Confederate culture was this positive, successful time in our country, or whether it was, a negative time in our country's history.